Welcome to Garrett ComSci. This is CS Principles on Code.org, Unit 3, Lesson 5, Intro to Programming. The activity for this lesson will all be on the Code.org activity levels. And on each level, we'll have a Do This, a Discuss, and a Modify section, where we investigate what's going on, think about some discussion questions, and then maybe make some changes and see how that affects what happens in the program. So here's level 1. The discussion question says, why do you think some information is in quotes and some is not? So we're going to run this program, see what it does with that discussion question in mind. So I'm going to hit run. Notice the slider here is on the slow side so that we see each line running one at a time. Each of these commands is a console.log, which just means display this stuff in the console, which is this down here. And notice all of them have double quotes around the text that's going to be displayed, except for this on line 5 that just has a number, 100. But all of it works as we would expect. So why do we think that's not in quotes? Well, it's a number, and so apparently displaying numbers in the console does not require double quotes. All this other stuff has double quotes around it and contains some text. Text that includes letters, uppercase and lowercase, periods, spaces, etc. And then the modification section says to add 2 lines of code, one that displays a string and one that displays a number. So we know what a number is. It's this on line 5. And all these others must be strings. And what that means is a string of characters, aka some text. So anytime we want to display some text, we've got to have some double quotes around it. Now it says to add 2 statements, one for a number and one for a string. And so for the string here, I'll say hello world, hello world, with an exclamation point and a space. And then down here, I'll put 1, 2, 3, 4. I can highlight all of it with Control A or Command A. And I'll type 1, 2, 3, 4 without quotes. And then I can run that again. I can speed it up to make it immediate if I like. And there's my hello world and my 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. Level 2. On level 2, we just have the screen with one big button. It says run the program to see how it works. You'll need to hit the run button. And then the discussion question asks us to notice the differences between console.log and setProperty. And then we're going to add one of each on our own. So first let's run it and see what happens. I'll leave it on slow. First thing is console.log starting my program. And then these 3 properties of the big button change. So we saw 3 details change about that, and then we see ending my program down here. What changed about the big button? I can move this over so I can see it all. It says set property of what item? The big button. And what property of that item? The background color is set to blue. So we see that. And the big button's height is changed to 200 pixels. The big button's text is changed to, now it's a bigger button. So we have set property, and then we have 3 spots for inputs. First, what element are we talking about? And then what property of that element? And then what value do you want to set that property to? And so you can explore all the options for a given element using the drop-downs. And now it says add one of each. So let's go ahead and reset this. And we'll go back to our toolbox. I'll add a set property down here. Let's go ahead and set the property of the screen itself. This is screen 1, notice. So I'll set the background color of screen 1 to red. And then I will also console.log at the end, and I'll say program ended. Okay, so now I will run it. I'll speed it up just a little bit. Okay, change to blue, change the height, change the text, and now the background of screen 1 is red, and I've got ending my program, program ended. All right. Notice that you can hover over any of these blocks. To learn more about how they work, you can hover over and see a little bit of detail here and click here for more examples. And especially on this set property, that might be useful to you. And you can see more examples of how that can be used properly. Now let's go to level 3. Level 3 says run this program, see how it works, make sure you click the button. And here's our discussion questions as we run the program. How does the on-event block work? Be as specific as possible. And how do commands inside an on-event run differently from the commands outside an on-event? So real quick, let's notice what an on-event is. It's this yellow block here, which contains some other code. And then we've got a line of code here on line 1 and line 8 that are independent of that on-event. So let's run this and see what happens. When I run it and don't do anything else, I get starting my program, and then I get ending my program. And none of this code inside here actually executed, because this event, a click of the big button, has not occurred yet. So now when I click the big button, it actually goes in here and does all of this code, because it was triggered by a click to the big button. So I get all of these changes that we saw before, and then it also console.logs you clicked the button. Modify. Okay, so first let's notice the answer to this one. How do commands inside an on-event run differently from commands outside? So again, notice that all of the code that's not in an on-event, in this case that's lines 1 and 8, runs from top to bottom all the way through as soon as the code is run. So I got starting and ending. And the on-event blocks, all the code inside the on-event block, only runs when the event triggers this code. So I have to click the big button for this to happen. And I can even click it again, and it'll do all of it again. This won't make any changes, of course, but it will console.log one more time. You clicked the button. Add one command inside the on event and one outside it. So I can, I'll just do the same thing I did earlier and make the background of the screen red. There we go. And then I will also put one outside. Oh, let's do the same exact thing down here. Screen, background, and I'll make that one white. Okay, so now what will happen, and I need to reset this first. Now what will happen, 1, 9, and 10 will run from top to bottom first. So it'll change my screen to white, and then it'll change it to red only when I click the button. So, starting my program, and then background to white, ending my program, and now it's waiting for a click possibly. So when I click this, it changes that to blue and to 200, and now it's a bigger button, and then it makes my screen red. And also logs you clicked the button. Great. Level 4. Level 4 is very similar, but in this case they really want you to read through all of this code. They want you to look at this code and predict what exactly will happen. And so you're supposed to put that in words here, and then it allows you to run it and check your work. So I've already put in a placeholder, just a period there, so that I can run it and show you. But first, let's predict. 1, 8, 9, and 10 are lines that are outside the on event, so they will happen from top to bottom. I'm going to get starting my program. Then the yellow button's border width will be set to a thickness of 10, which is probably bigger than this. The font size will be made 14, which is probably smaller than this. And then I'll get ending my program. First, let's check that. And I'll make it pretty fast. Yes, that's exactly what happened. And now when I click the green button, what will happen? The width of the green button will change to 200. It'll change to, now it's a squished green button. And the font will change to Impact, which is a bold, kind of dramatic font. And then we'll get you clicked the button in the console. So that's exactly what happened. So distinguishing and predicting what will happen when we have this mixture of stuff inside and stuff outside of an on event. You need to be able to look at some code with both and predict exactly what will happen in what order. Level 5. Run this program, see how it works, make sure you click the button as usual. Then the discussion question is, how does the set screen block work? We see that right here. You can, of course, figure that out by hovering, reading this, and also looking at examples. Notice where set screen appears in this code. It happens for both of these on events, the next button and the back button being clicked. And then later we'll modify it to add one command inside the on event, the second on event, to set one property of the home icon, this right here. So let's first run it. Nothing is outside the on event, so nothing happens automatically. But when I click the next button, it sets the screen to screen 2, which is this, and prints you clicked the next button in the console. Now I'm going to click the back button, and it sets the screen to the home screen and logs you clicked the back button. Great. We'll reset that. Add one command inside the on event to set one property of the home icon. So set property inside here. I choose the element ID, home icon, and I'll change its color, icon color, to red. So let's test that. Go to next screen. Okay. When I click this, it should also change that to red. Great. And so that's all for this level. Level 6, Cats or Dogs app. So it says run this program to see how it works. Make sure to click both buttons. And then the discussion question will have us thinking about the play sound block, and then the blocks that start with 2 slashes, 2 forward slashes. We see a play sound right here, and we see some // lines here and here. So when we run it, nothing happens automatically. So the only things outside of an on event block are these // lines. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Nothing happened. Let's hit cats. So when I hit cats, I get the message label text changed to cats rule, and I get play sound of a cat.mp3. I heard a meow. I assume you could hear that on the recording too, but it happened. And then set property pet image, the image, to this URL, which must be this picture. And you can imagine all the same stuff happens. Well, not quite all the same stuff. This message changes to dogs are number one, and this image updates to a dog, but I didn't get a sound. And you can see that here. Okay, so how does the play sound work? I can scroll over here, and it looks like it has up to 2 inputs. The first one is the URL of the sound, and the second one is loop, as in, do I want it to loop, yes or no? True or false, actually. And if we don't include that second input, it defaults to false. So no looping, just play once and stop. So that seems to be what's happening here in line 5. I'll drag, it says in modify, add code so the dog button makes sound too. So I'll do play sound in the dog button, click on event. And see, it's got this default, but I can drop down and choose an animal, and then scroll down to dog. Choose. And look at this, it automatically gives me a false there, which is correct. I don't want it to loop forever. You can also hit this button and it'll remove the false or the true, and it will default to false and not loop. That's good. Now change the messages when each button is clicked. So they just want a different message here. So I will change cat's rule to I love cats. And then this one over here I'll change to woof woof. So there's cats and there's dogs. Very good. Level 7. This is our last level. Level 8 is just a check for understanding question. So we've got this program that gives us a pretty sky. There's a message down here. It says save the sparrow. So I'm just going to mouse over. That means just let it pass over but not click the sparrow there. And look, things moved a little bit. I'm going to update this all the way to fast so that it works immediately. Okay, if I mouse over a hawk, it says avoid the hawk. So hawk is bad, sparrow is good. So there's sparrow, and I saved another sparrow. And it seems to be randomly moving to different parts of the screen. Both birds move to random parts of the screen every time I mouse over them. So now let's see how that's working. So first of all, I see a play sound command, and it has this sound URL and then true on loop. So it's got some background music that I'm not sure you can hear on the recording. So it loops as long as you're running the app. And then I've got an on event for mousing over the hawk and an on event for mousing over the sparrow. When I mouse over the hawk, I get this wrong sound, a negative sound, because I'm supposed to be avoiding the hawk. And then it randomizes the location of both the hawk and the sparrow. And for each, I have to randomize the x coordinate and the y coordinate. And then I see this random number being selected for the x and for the y, and for the x and for the y, for the hawk and sparrow respectively. So I need to generate a random x value that will be appropriate for the screen. And notice in the modify they're asking us, fix this so that it will randomize across the whole screen, not just the top left corner. You might have noticed it stayed up here. So I can reset this, and I can drag my mouse over and see the coordinates appearing. So I want it to be about this range. And of course, these have some size to them, so I don't want them to go off the screen. So I'll say the x should go between 0 and 300, and the y should go between 0 and 430. So I'm going to change all the x's to 0 to 300, and it'll give me a random number anywhere between 0 and 300, inclusive of both boundaries. And this x to 300, and this x down here to 300, and 300. And the y's, I decided 430. 430, 430, 430, 430. Okay, what else? Experiment with other event types besides mouse over and click. Well, those are the only ones that'll work in this situation, but that is a good thing to explore with this drop-down button, and you can see which ones work and make sense in a given situation, and which ones don't. So let's run it the way we have it. Look at that, it went down further. Yes, it's using the whole screen now. So that looks nice. Very good. There's one thing I forgot from the previous level. It asked us to talk about these blocks that begin with // and as I mentioned earlier, // blocks don't seem to do anything, and that's because they're called comments on the code. They're not code themselves, and so therefore the computer will ignore all lines that begin with // Comments are not for the computer, they're for the humans who might read the code. That is, the human who's writing the code in the first place, the humans you might be working with to check your code or to fix it, and humans that might be in charge of keeping your code up to date in the future. So comments are for humans, they're ignored by computers. And these comments start with a // and in particular a // Slashes are named for the direction that the top of the slash points, forward in this case. And that's the last of these levels. So to wrap up, let's look at some vocab. One of these blocks is called a program statement, a command or instruction, sometimes also referred to as a code statement or just a line of code. And a program is a collection of program statements. Programs run or execute one command at a time. Here's an example of a couple of lines executing in one of our levels. And there are two different ways for programs to run. If there are no on events, then the whole program is using sequential programming. So all the program statements run in order from top to bottom, and they're not impacted by user interaction. And so they'll run in the same order every time. But if there are any on events in your code, then all the stuff that's not in an on event will run from top to bottom, but the things that are in an on event will only happen when they're triggered by the specified event. In this case, it's clicking the big button. And so that could cause programs to run differently each time, depending on what the user does. When do they click the button? How many times do they click the button, for example? And so you need to be pretty aware of that difference and be able to predict exactly what will happen in some code if you saw a mixture of sequential and event-driven. And that's all for this lesson. I hope to see you back here for the next lesson, and make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already to see all that's to come. Goodbye.